Namaste and Suswagatam to our Sunday edition of Gyan Ganga, Words of Wisdom on our Virat Hindustan Sangam social media channels. As you know, we meet twice a week. On Saturdays, we meet for the legal Gyan Ganga or the legal Words of Wisdom Nyay Gyan Ganga. And Sunday is our regular show of Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga, wherein Dr. Subramanian Swamy and our guests speak on certain topical issues. As you know, we have today with us, besides Dr. Subramanian Swamy, who is the founder president of the Virat Hindustan Sangam, we have with us Professor M.D. Nalapat. As you know, he has been appearing in our shows very often. He is an Indian academician and columnist. Currently, he is the editorial director of India TV Network and the Sunday Guardian. He is also vice chair of the Manipal Advanced Research Group and the director of the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations at the Manipal University. He has been editor of the Times of India and editor of Matrabhumi. Professor Nalapat writes extensively on security, policy, and international affairs. We welcome Professor M.D. Nalapat to our show, and we thank our co-host, Professor Arvind Chaturvedi from New Delhi, and Mr. Ramesh Swamy for co-hosting this program with me for Words of Wisdom. I also have to thank our technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas from Pune, Ishwar Iyer from Navi Mumbai, Vishal Mehta from Mumbai, Rakesh Gadgi from Karnataka, and Swaminathan from Chennai for their support to put this program together. Mr. Nalapat is joining us actually from Trivandrum, and we may have some technical difficulties, but I think we have got him on the line back. So with this introductory remarks, I will now request Dr. Swamy. As you know, today we are discussing the topic of disengagement with China on the LAC and what it looks the way forward, and Indo-US relations. We'll be discussing these two important issues. So with these opening remarks, it's over to Dr. Swamy for his introduction of the topic, and then we will hear Professor M.D. Nalapat.
Thank you, Jagdish. We are fortunate to get a man like Nalapat on our program. He's a reputed scholar and has a long history of making very successful predictions about national security matters. And of course, he's a professor in Manipal University. And at the same time, he has vast editorial experience in newspapers, having been editor of Matrabhumi and then Times of India, and then now is the editorial director, I think, in Sunday Guardian, which has now become one of the most read papers by intellectuals on international affairs and other affairs. So what I want to do is put it in as simple a form so that our readers understand what we are up against. Why? Because there is so much spin being put out by the government, and you raise the spirits of the people, that's fine, but then must make sure that there won't be a letdown, and then there's a depression that will follow. So it happened in 1962, and we don't want to repeat that. We want some degree of realism, some degree of frankness, and at the same time a lofty objective which inspires the troops as well as it inspires the people. The first question basically is that Professor Nalapat would, I think he should explain to people. For almost 5 full years from 2014, Modi and Xi Jinping met 18 times. And now we learn that the line of control, now let me explain what this line of control is. It's a line drawn up during Narasimha Rao's period, And the line of control was a temporary line because we had decided that we will settle the border issue amicably by discussion. So there was no question of who owns what. For example, Aksai Chin, the whole of Aksai Chin is on the Chinese side of the LAC. And but we know very well that Aksai Chin is an integral part of India. And so we were hoping that there can be a discussion and come to an agreement, and agreement as a part of an overall India-China strategic compact, and Aksai Chen would be then peacefully handed over to India. But the LAC, after Narasimha Rao's period and after Deng Xiaoping passed away, has now become a line which the Chinese are caricaturing, because they have crossed across that, not only during the last 1 year, but also they have been continuously crossing over in bits and pieces to 2006 till 2013. Depsang was completely taken over in 2013. So the Congress has no authority anymore to speak and criticize us. They have to explain what they were doing. And so it's no use telling that we were quiet, we were meeting Xi Jinping and dining and wining him. But the fact is that this is something where the public people need to know. Number one, that what is the extent of Chinese presence on mutually agreed Indian territory, and that is on this side of the LAC. And has India on their side of the LAC, as we now find out in Pangong Lake Hills,
Right.
India has come and taken the peak. So the second question becomes that this disengagement means what? I mean, the disengagement only saying that you are engaged and then you pull back. But the issue is that Chinese have occupied Indian territory, which is mutually recognized since 1993. So have they come back on that? Yes, we are agreeing now. We have agreed now to come back from the Pangong Lake thing. I'm told there is also an agreement on the Kailash high points. So that is, it's got nothing to do with Kailash mountain, but it's got to do with a area near Galwan. So please, Mr. Professor Nalapat, tell us explicitly what is it the Chinese took, and what is it that we took, and what is it that we are returning, and what is it the Chinese are returning, or is the Chinese returning anything at all? Or we are the ones who are just doing all the Bhutan and Satyagraha and the giving away of land, that's another. Third is, do you think that India, with its present capability, can take on the Chinese and defeat them, unlike in 1962? All the
Yes, yes.
shortcomings, yes. Your turn is coming, sir. I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you do it? And why is the United States so unhappy that we have contracted to buy the S-400? And would that lead to our straining of relations with the United States if we took S-400? And final question is, why is it that suddenly one neighbor after another neighbor is putting a distance with us? Started with Nepal, then the relaxation on Chinese demands by the Bhutanese, and then now we find that after the coup, Myanmar has also become very pro-Chinese. Then Bangladesh, which is muted in its expressions, but certainly very pro-Chinese. Now, Sri Lanka too, I find, has been frustrated by or something, and they by our attitudes, and they have now decided to make lavish deals with the Chinese once again. And the Maldives have decided to have a military alliance with the United States, and, not with us. I mean, we have a presence, but there was no reason for the United States to come all this distance. So, overall, please conclude your thing about our Indo-US relations. I don't get any such feeling that there is any great warmth in the US present administration towards India. Of course, India is a very important country, but somehow there seems to be a distinction being made in the United States in its rhetoric between Modi and India, and this constant issuing of statements about their commitment to India, United States commitment to democracy, and ours constantly blacking out that particular part of those statements. They give the other parts of the statements, our INB ministry and MEA, but whenever there any reference to democracy, I don't know why they delete that particular portion. So overall, where do we stand in short? Professor Nalapat, please show us the way.
Well, Dr. Swamy, I must say that you have been very comprehensive as usual in your setting the context. And may I say that I'll try and reply to the extent that the extent of knowledge that I have on this particular situation allows. In the first place, it's very important to always look at any strategic situation. Of course, you're aware of your own point of view, but from the point of view of the other side. And from the Chinese point of view, since 1949, Mao Zedong said that there is a new China. You remember the new China news agency. Well, that's correct, because the new China basically did not go by any of the established protocols, practices, procedures of the China before it, whether it's Republican China or whether it is monarchical China. For example, the Chinese the Beijing is now in effective control of Tibet, of Xinjiang, of Manchuria, of Inner Mongolia. They would, of course, like to be in control of Arunachal Pradesh. For them, now they would, of course, like to be in control of Taiwan as well. Now, therefore, that is why, for example, when someone talks about the one China policy of India, well, I would like to remind them that in the Chinese view, one China includes Arunachal. And one China includes large parts of Ladakh over and above the part that's already occupied by them. And one China includes Bhutan. One China includes Sikkim. There are maps that are shown in public to foreigners, and there are maps that are kept only for Chinese. And it's only the second maps that give you a realistic idea of their strategy. So essentially, when you're talking about one China policy, I mean, are we saying that Arunachal belongs to China? Are we saying that those areas of Ladakh, which are under the control of China, belong to China? Are we saying Sikkim and Bhutan are part of China? And of course, we are not. So I only want to say that we have to be very nuanced in our statements in a way which, frankly, we are not. That leads to a certain, not only ambiguity, but a misconstruction of our intentions and understanding of our will and resolve, which is extremely dangerous when you're facing a country with as much, if I may say so, propensity to analyze and analyze and analyze and analyze and go through data as the People's Republic of China. Now, may I say one thing? We are, of course, talking about Arunachal Pradesh is a part of India, very true. In fact, Aksai Chin is also a part of India, and we had several agreements with the Chinese when they quietly came and occupied that. And as far as I'm aware, I don't think anybody mentioned that to Jawaharlal Nehru. Possibly he was probably having an afternoon nap or something when individuals who knew that came to meet him. I don't know. But he obviously did not seem to have that. But I'd like to point out, in the case of Tibet, in the case of Manchuria, in the case of Inner Mongolia, in the case of Xinjiang, look, and in the case of this entire stretch of waterway called the South China Sea, which China says is actually an inland lake. It's not even a lake in the Indian Ocean. It's a lake inside China, a little magnified in scale on the map, but a lake inside China, which miraculously other countries can enter and leave. Look, if they have created for themselves a narrative, and in this narrative, they were the eternal masters of all these territories. They means the Communist Party of China and the People's Republic of China. Now, when you go back, for example, let us say that there is an emperor sent a representative to Tibet. Well, that clearly means that Tibet was part of China, even during that period. Otherwise, why would the emperor send a representative there? Xinjiang, same thing. Other locations, same thing. I mean, fortunately for India, I don't think any representative of the emperor ever came to Arunachal. And I don't think any representative of the emperor came to Ladakh. Otherwise, I think whatever chances we have of discussing this through negotiation, and personally those chances have always looked very slim to me, will not exist. Because so
only,
Chinese, I can tell you,
only
the
Buddhist,
sorry.
only Buddhist monks came, by the way. Only Buddhist
Well,
monks.
no, I'm sorry. It's not only Buddhist folks. If you call the Communist Party of China Buddhist Party, you're welcome to. But I'm talking about the Communist Party of China, and they claim the whole of Tibet as theirs, when in fact, in reality, it is theirs by force of arms. And from Mao Zedong, what was his contribution to New China? His contribution to New China was integrating almost double the extent of Republican China controlled territory and Emperor of China controlled territory. We're not talking about expeditions by soldiers and they who came back. We're talking about territory which is run on a 24/7 basis, on a year-long basis by Beijing, Peking, or or whatever capital was in vogue, Nanking or whatever at that period. So I would only like to say that that is why, for example, when we are talking about say Arunachal or anything, they if they give a concession on any of these, they may do so. They've done that with the Soviet Union, for example, with Russia, I mean, not the Soviet Union. They have done that with Myanmar. But they will expect in return some very major concessions in return for the simple reason that their entire construct is based on this kind of I mean, what we would call it modern facts. I mean, we all know that politicians, unfortunately, many scholars, I mean, many officials, we all use, we are all now using our own facts, and this has happened for thousands of years. It's not yesterday. It's not Donald Trump who invented this. It's not the Chinese Communist Party who invented their own facts. The British invented a whole chain of facts to explain why it was so essential for world civilization that the British continued to rule India. I mean, Churchill was absolutely emphatic, and the poor man believed that if the British left the control of India, well, that entire country will fall apart. Tens of millions will perish, and of course, we all know the partition of India took place to prevent a massacre, and the partition of India created a massacre. So, I mean, all I can say is that from the Chinese point of view, they are holding on to this narrative because this is the narrative that has doubled the size of Republican China and monarchical China. The People's Republic of China is double the size of these other constructs. And that is why it has to be seen as fundamentally different from China over the last 5,000, 6,000 years. Of course, and let me say, Dr. Swamy, I share entirely with you my very warm feelings towards the Chinese people and my very deep respect for Chinese culture. But I can only say new China is really a new China, and their frontiers are defined on the basis of this particular quote unquote facts that they regard as facts. Now, for example, in the case of COVID-19, the WHO has now told us that it didn't come from a lab, it didn't come from the bat, it probably didn't come from Wuhan. Well, I don't know where it came from. It may have come from London also, or it may have
Or
come from
Nagaland.
Geneva. For all
Or
we know, some
Nagaland.
scientists in the WHO. No, no, it may have come from Geneva because some scientists at WHO may have played rogue, and then you would have flown to Beijing and planted it there. Who knows? I mean, but the WHO says, I mean, that is the kind of thing, narrative they like very much. So again, I would like to say, Dr. Swamy, I'm really, I mean, we're talking about 18 rounds of meetings between Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. I'm glad they took place. I'm very glad they took place. But I can tell you that the plans on the Chinese side take a long time. And so far as Xi Jinping's visit is concerned, I'm talking about the latest visit in a state which I think all of us really love, and you, if I may say so, particularly Tamil Nadu. Well, he was here for a very short time, and before he could even taste the cuisine, I mean, of proper Indian food, he was in Nepal, and he was in
Yes,
Nepal
that's right.
meeting the leaders who have made a political habit out of blasting India left, right, and center. Of course, we helped them to eliminate the monarchy, and if I may say so, during the UPA period, especially in UPA 1, which depended on the CPM, I mean, in Parliament, a
Yes.
lot of help was given to precisely those leaders in Nepal who are today hostile to us.
That's right.
Precisely. I mean,
Oh,
a lot of help was given. India
yes.
spread its goodwill very generously and liberally. Well, some of us were
Yes.
not very happy about that. Just as some of us are not been very happy when the PDP was given an alliance with the BJP. We forecast
Yes.
it will not have a good end. It did not have a good end. And I think you and I have been saying for a long time, 370 is an abomination. It hurts the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It is part of the two-nation theory, which says Hindus and Muslims are separate. And we can never accept that people are separate in India on the grounds of religion or any other part of the world. It's an absurd theory. 370 was based on that. And thank God that the Modi government has abolished it. And what happened? Did the heavens fall? Did the roof cave in? Were there earthquakes? Nothing of the kind happened. This is exactly what we prophesied for a long time happened, which is nothing happened. I mean, again, Dr. Swamy, pardon me for being a little retrospective. When, poor Narasimha Rao, whom you knew well, I knew well, you remember very well in 93 itself, he was talking about exploding a nuclear device. Then,
Yes.
yes, a gentleman who subsequently became prime minister came to him and said, Prime Minister, if you do that, economy will be in meltdown, complete meltdown. I mean, hundreds of millions of people will lose their jobs. And, well, the Prime Minister didn't do it. 98, Mr. Vajpayee did it. And there on two front page items came in the Times of India on soon after that. I think the next day or the day after. One was by Swaminathan Iyer saying that now the Indian economy is headed for collapse, and the other was by a chap called MD Nalapat, who said nothing doing. These sanctions are going to have no impact on the Indian economy. They are nothing. They are not even a light slap on the wrist. And as you know, Swaminathan Iyer is a brilliant man, but his forecast that the Indian economy will dissolve into some bottomless pit was not among his better judgments, if I may say so. So, what I want to say is we have to understand the Chinese. And for the Chinese, I can tell you, India is in a race for superpower status. You
Yeah.
and I have supported that. We have supported that for quite some time. I remember in the 90s, I used to write. And, before, I mean, I was essentially shut out of quote unquote mainstream media for about a decade because of the influence of a certain individual whom everybody
Yes.
seems to have forgotten today, except possibly you. But I'm not going to name that individual. But,
Yeah.
the point of the matter is, that we have to understand them very, very clearly. And they see India. I wrote about, India becoming a future superpower. Believe me, Dr. Swamy, there are people who actually told me to my face, "Are you sure that you don't need to consult a good psychiatrist? Are you sure that you're entirely sane, that you're logical? I mean, this seems like, I mean, this is not even a dream. It's not even a nightmare. It's not even fantasy. It's worse than all that." All I said was, we are a potential superpower because of the strength and resilience of the Indian people. Of course, a
Yeah.
horrible colonial system is a different matter. Well, the Chinese, I can tell you, are a lot smarter than the people who were talked to me at that time. And by the way,
Yeah.
many of them who said that I should consult a psychiatrist are today in every platform talking about India as the future superpower. Some are even saying India is already a superpower. With $3 trillion, we are not yet a superpower, but they are now saying India is superpower. And I'm very happy that they've changed their minds about India in these 20 years. But what I want to
Yeah.
say, the Chinese have studied us intensively. They know we have the potential of being a superpower. And they would like to be the only superpower in Asia. Believe me, I can tell you, there is no question of having more than one tiger on the mountain. You and I know it's an old saying in China, there can only be one tiger on the mountain. And as far as Beijing is concerned, it is Beijing, it is China, it's the People's Republic of China. Every Chinese military officer, every Chinese strategic analyst, this has been drilled into him that come what may, at all costs, India must be prevented from becoming a superpower.
Yeah.
You can see the amount of money they've been pouring into Pakistan.
Uh,
You can see the nuclear
yeah.
technology they've given. At
Yeah.
Fatehganj, you have a missile plant entirely Chinese. I mean, the Pakistan military.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure that they can even work in a science class pre-university. But the reality is the Chinese have helped them big time. And
Yeah.
why? To stop, to block permanently, mark my words, the road to India becoming a superpower. Of course, at the same time, they themselves said they have no superpower ambitions. Even today, they say we are not ambitious at all. All we want is the entire South China Sea. All we want is Taiwan. All we want is Arunachal Pradesh. All we want is basically all logistic change should end with us. All we want is that our new digital currency should be the currency, the reserve currency of the world, and the dollar should be replaced. That's all we want. That's nothing. I mean, that's a very reasonable demand for such an advanced civilization and people. Yes, of course. But may I say, India is not entirely unadvanced as a civilization and people. And
Yeah.
I have always told my old friends in China, as I know you have, that sorry, there will be two tigers on this mountain, and there will be a
Yeah.
third superpower, and that
Yeah.
third superpower is India. And my advice to you, my old friends, whom I respect very much, I'd like to say I have immense respect for the team around Xi Jinping. They are extremely smart people. They are extremely, if I may say so, strategically, very long-term planners. But I would like to say that I was very clear on that. And of course, I've been saying repeatedly that so far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan will be to China what Afghanistan was to the Soviet Union. It is going to be one of the main causes of Chinese decline. And I am saying this now on your channel. I'm quite aware there must be at least 40 people who are by some means or the other listening to our conversation from that the second superpower of the world, which is China, which I had predicted 18 years before any Chinese did, that they're going to come as superpower. I predicted, with that 18 years before anybody in China did that. But I'd
Yeah.
like to say that this is what they are active in planning. You're seeing
Yeah.
China in Tibet. You're seeing
Yeah.
China in Sri Lanka. You're seeing China in Myanmar. I mean,
Yeah.
Myanmar, for example. Look, we are talking about democracy. Uh, Dr. Swamy, I and you, we believe in democracy. We practice it. In our sense, you in your household, and me as a not just as a political scientist, but in our personal life, we would
Yeah.
like to say that we practice democracy.
Yeah.
But may I say one thing? The military took over Myanmar, and I pointed out that look, this is not democracy. Dao Aung San Suu Kyi
Yeah.
loves India. She has
Yes.
stayed in India, and she's been in
That's
India. She
studied. Yeah.
studied in India, and she is the elected leader of Myanmar. So please, while you're telling the military, yes, we will not have sanctions, and I agree, we should not have sanctions. We should not in any way do anything that harms the Myanmar people. And we are not America. We cannot sanction the generals. We have to work with them. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can't we at least say to the whole world that we would like to get the elected government back? When you have the generals saying that no, this election was not free and fair. Aung San Suu Kyi was not elected. So I pointed out a recent television show. This is like Donald Trump, that the Biden comes to power, it is not free and fair. The only election that's free and fair is if Donald Trump comes to power. The only election that is free and fair for the Burmese military is if its stooges come to power. I'm sorry, Dr. Swamy, I oppose Donald Trump saying these things. For the last 8 or 9 months, as you can see, I've been pretty negative on Trump and pretty positive on Biden. And I'd like to say, I wish the world's biggest democracy will speak with a slightly bigger voice.
Yeah.
Now, you
May I
raised
interrupt
several
you?
issues.
May I interrupt you?
One, I'll say,
May
as you
I,
can see,
may I interrupt you for just to tell you, because
please,
in the
please.
remaining time, the readers would like to know what do you think is happening in this disengagement? Are we gaining, losing? Some of the media is predicting how we have got our way, we are making the Chinese back down, and so on. What is it that the Chinese occupied? What is it that they are disengaging on?
Look,
This is one aspect. And two, why is it that all our neighbors have suddenly turned against us? Can you also, I don't want to change your direction, but after you finish, please deal with these two questions also.
no, I'd like to start with these two questions, and I'd like to say that, look, I'm outside government completely. I'm a private citizen. So obviously, my information is not the kind of information that's available to those in government. But I'd only like to say that I'm going by the press statements and recorded statements of the Prime Minister that the military must be in the driver's seat in any negotiation with China. I think that is a very correct thing. The military has to be in the driver's seat. Having said that, I would like to say, I mean, yes, I've heard these stories about, for example, disengagement from the Kailash range, etc., etc.
Yes.
I frankly cannot believe that the Indian military would agree to that. That would be 100 times worse than the surrendering of Haji Pir by Lal Bahadur Shastri. Much worse, to be frank with you. The Kailash range is absolutely essential to ensure that if there is a misadventure on the border, well, India is prepared to give a fitting response. As I have written and said, 62 should become 1971. We have the capacity. For that, we need the Kailash range, point number one. So I refuse to believe Minister Narendra Modi would surrender the Kailash range under any circumstances from the full and effective control of the Indian Army, whose brave Jawans seized it in a glorious operation.
Yeah.
So I think it was in August or so, if I recall. I don't believe it's going to happen. I think you've seen some newspaper reports. It is not possible. Second is you are mentioning about S-400. Look, I have been talking about S-400 for quite some time. I've been trolled very mercilessly on that. And I'm happy to say that less and less people are now trolling me because more and more people understand what I said then. The Russians and Chinese are joined at the hip.
Yes.
So far as S-400 is concerned, you look at Turkey, F-35, a first-class aircraft, very good aircraft. The price tag of F-35, you should check on that. It's a very reasonable price tag. Well, it's a first-class aircraft. Now, I mean, Sunday Guardian, I carried today, if I'm not mistaken, a report about the Americans offering us, both Boeing and Lockheed, offering us the modern platforms to build in India. Atmanirbhar Bharat. That doesn't mean going in for for charka and abandoning all your textile mills. It means having more production in India.
Yes.
These the American Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Raytheon, Lockheed, all of them are keen on coming to India. This is something I've been saying ever since the S-400 thing was done. I'd like to make one point, Dr. Swamy. They are the Chinese. If I was a Chinese general, and if I had been given a command to teach a lesson to the Indians, knock them off balance so that their superpower ambitions vanish for at least a generation, and they are completely off balance, well, two requisites are needed. One, the PLA must establish control over the Kailash range. And two, India must install the S-400 so that advanced American platforms can no longer routinely come to India. The Chinese are very concerned about Daulat Beg Odi. Prime Minister Modi has done magnificent work on building roads and infrastructure. During this particular situation with China, the Americans have done very good work. And I would like to basically say Mike Pompeo and Esper, both of them did extremely good work in ensuring that there was a flow of logistics. And of course, the Director of National Intelligence also in the US gave, I think, fairly useful intelligence, with the result that our gallant soldiers were able to basically tell the Chinese there's a big change since Nehru put BM Call in charge of the military that is facing you. There's a big change, and I can tell you the casualty figures on the Chinese side. The Americans say it's 120, even the Russians say it's 40.
Yes.
I mean, the Russians are the closest allies of the Chinese. Even the Pakistanis are not saying there was no casualty. I expected, in fact, Imran Khan to say, "What are you talking about? There is no casualty." Imran has, I think, wisely decided to keep quiet. But even the Russians are saying 40. My estimate, based on some satellite data that I was shown from my sources, and many of my sources are 10, 20, 30 years old in length. So we have a relationship of trust. Well, at least 60 people on the PLA perished. And I can tell you that would have given them a very, very good reality check, because I think they were basing themselves on the fables fed by the Pakistan military, which is very eager for a very strong clash between India and China, and
Yes.
a clash where America does not get involved. So they are
Yes.
doing two things now. One, they are working in America, and I'm sorry to say, certain other countries are also working along with them. One country in which we are neck deep involved in a lot of collaboration in matters of this thing, and another country which you and I am not going to name because we both like that country very much. We like the people of that country. We are not happy with what they're doing, and we know that what they're doing is against their own interests. But I'd like to say there's a systematic effort in America to blacken the reputation of India, to blacken the face of India, and to paint the Prime Minister of India as a dictator, as a Hitler, etc., etc., etc. Well, I'd like to say that that has had some effect. You see the New York Times, but I was happy to see the New York Times is not living in La La Land only where India is concerned. It's also in La La Land on Myanmar, because I saw a report in the New York Times that the generals are actually fanatically anti-Chinese, and Aung San Suu Kyi is a puppet of China. Thank you, New York Times. for giving me a good laugh after many weeks in which I found it difficult to laugh given the situation. Thank you. Look, I'd like to say, if we set up the S-400, we are foreclosing, in my view, the absolute all-weather alliance that we need on the military level with the United States. We are foreclosing the option of having our defense supply chains interlinked with the United States supply chain. We're talking about Taiwan, for example. The Taiwanese government under Tsai Ing-wen, an extremely smart lady, I can tell you, she's ethnic Chinese, but she knows very well Taiwan has never been a part of communist China, and she intends that it will never be a part of communist China. From day
Yeah.
one, she has been working to integrate Taiwanese and American security and supply chains. And today they have gone very far in that, with the result that if there is a misadventure across the Taiwan Straits, the other side is going to suffer substantial damage. That kind of a close interlocking is necessary between India and the United States as well, India and Australia, India and Japan, India and the
Yes.
Quad. I don't know why it's not being formalized, the Quad. I don't know why we are not giving up the S-400. But as I said, I have confidence in Prime Minister Modi now that he has seen, for example, CATSA, and he has seen, for example, how Turkey has been sanctioned, and he has seen, for example, how F-35 assembly line has left Turkey, and
Yeah.
they are looking at coming to India. I'm sure he
Yeah.
will understand that if they left Turkey because of S-400, they're not going to come to India if India installed S-400. My view, Dr.
Yes.
Swamy, these generals are waiting for the installation of S-400 and the vacating of Kailash Heights, and then, of course, massing, etc., before they make their move. I hope neither happens, and I'm very confident Prime Minister Modi will ensure neither of this is happening. So I'd like to say what I'm reading and what I'm hearing in different locations, I don't know what is true and what is not, but I have confidence in the Prime Minister. I'm sure he knows giving up Kailash range is catastrophic. And I'm sure he is aware by now that sanctions are inevitable. And these sanctions are not going to be of the 1998 kind, because today India is much more interlocked with the United States than it was in that period. They're going to be much more devastating. And we are foreclosed the question of a all-weather alliance with the United States that, frankly, they need and we need. I have written this. I can tell you it is absolutely indispensable for the Sino-Russian alliance and their satellite Pakistan, Chinese satellite Pakistan, fortunately not a Russian satellite. And I'd like to say I don't think the Russians are doing anything against India. The Chinese and Pakistanis are, the militaries are, their info warriors are, but not the Russians. The Russians are very active in the United States, Chinese are active, Pakistanis are active. But the Russians are not active in the US, in my view, against India. So let me say, I respect Russia a lot, and Vladimir Putin is one of the best chess players ever on the geopolitical scale. But I'd like to say very clearly that, look, it's very clear it will be a heavy blow to the security of India if you set up this system and foreclose this option of an alliance. And I'm very certain our government is not going to do it. Somebody, I think, has given them a wrong impression. God knows what. God knows whom they consult. They certainly don't consult me in any shape or form. But I don't know whom they consult. Somebody, I'm told them, no, nothing will happen. There'll be no sanctions. I asked these same people after sanctions on Turkey, what do you say? No, they'll be lifted. Well, they're not being lifted. They're going to be added on too. Trump tried to have some very weak sanctions on Turkey because I think he promised some people that there will be no sanctions. He seems to have fallen in love with Erdogan. He put the Kurds under the bus for Erdogan. He seems to have fallen in love with Wahhabism. He put the Afghan National Army under the bus for the Taliban. But I can tell you, even he had to impose sanctions. Believe me, it would be a catastrophic from the long-term point of view if you assume that China is ready to do another 1962. Now, if anybody who sets up S-400 can sign a declaration that the China will never, undertake another 1962, I would like to point them in the direction of K.N. Panikkar, Indian envoy to China, Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister, and Bengalil Kumar and Krishna Menon, the Defense Minister, who said the same thing multiple times. Don't worry, China will never do anything significant on the border. China will never do anything. How did they know? Well, they knew. They knew. And now, how do the people who are telling us S400 will not create a problem know? Well, they know. But if I can tell you, if this kind of an activity takes place, and I can predict if you vacate the Kailash Heights and you put in S400 and you avoid an alliance in the US, this kind of thing is likely to be almost certain. I'd like to say that these individuals, unlike last time when Nehru, Krishna Menon, and others escaped completely, this time they should be tried in the Red Fort for treason. There's no question about it. Because
let me ask you a
time,
question.
if they let this country down by fake kind of hopes, that was treason then. It is treason now. So, is that answered your question? I have faith.
Yeah, let me ask you a further question. If you spoke highly of Putin, then why are you against S-400?
Dr. Swamy, Putin is, let me tell you very clearly, Boris Yeltsin took over, if you remember, after the Soviet Union collapsed. Boris Yeltsin was a poodle of the West. I mean, I don't want to use the word puppet because Russians are proud people, and even Yeltsin was not a puppet but a poodle. And even Yeltsin could not get the Americans, especially under Bill Clinton, to stop their activity designed to reduce Russia to a third-class power. And, even Putin tried. See, we are all Europeans now, Gorbachev. Putin also, he is from,
what,
a city that is one
No. What is your objection? Excuse me. What's your objection to S-400 if you have no objection to Putin?
I have no objection to Putin at all. He is playing his game beautifully.
All right, but what is then your objection to S-400?
I'm sorry. Yes, because if S-400 will be the greatest gift that Russia is giving China, because it will foreclose the question of a 24/7 full scope alliance between India and the United States, which is the big nightmare of the PLA. It has been a nightmare of the PLA for the last 30 years, I can tell you. In fact, since the Rajiv Gandhi's time, it has been a nightmare. And that is why I'm against that. And that's why I'm saying when other platforms are available, when other systems are available, why are we going ahead with platforms and with dependencies that the Chinese are well aware of?
I'm sorry.
Weaponry, laser. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just to sharpen the question, what is it wrong? What is wrong with S-400 that we should not acquire it? I can tell you what I think, but then why are you against S-400 coming to India?
I'm not against S-400, but if you set up S-400 in your territory, it is going to foreclose advanced American weapons platforms being routinely used for offensive defense on Indian soil.
Okay,
and
so
I can tell you, we may need those air platforms, we may need those drones, we may need those laser-guided bombs and missiles, we may need all of them in a future conflict with not Pakistan, but possibly another country. And that is why I do not believe it is wise to set it up. It's a first-class system. The Russians are first-class technicians, but your setting it up forecloses an option that is absolutely essential for the United States and India. Believe me, if this option is foreclosed, it's a matter of time before the Sino-Russian alliance controls the Indo-Pacific. And
what about? Yeah, I understand. This is a clear answer. But what about the fact that many people now think, take the foreign secretary, former foreign secretary, Mr. Gokhale, etc., the Warsaw Institute of Defense Research, and so many others are now saying, that Russia is, because of its financial indebtedness to China, has now become its junior partner. It will never go against the Chinese, and therefore any weapon system that we buy from Russia would bound to have Chinese electronics in it. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'd like to say that I know Vijay Gokhale for quite some time. Back in the time when he was representative of Taiwan, he's a very sharp. He has a very sharp mind. Our current, Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla has an equally sharp mind, and the Minister Jaishankar has a full strategic mind, which is why I cannot believe that the information is not there before the government of India, that those people who, like Nehru, Krishna Menon, and multiple others, fooled India into believing that there will never be a 1962 war, are now similarly saying S-400, there'll be no consequences on the relationship with America. I mean, look, I fully agree with Vijay Gokhale, 100%. I'm glad he said it.
Okay. All right.
I
Then,
agree totally with him.
all right. Then there's one question left. Why are all our neighbors turning against us in terms of our relations, their relations with China?
Dr. Swamy, I would beg to differ from you. They are not turning against us. Certain elites have turned against us. Certain political groups have turned against us. And may I say, many of these elites and political groups are elites and political groups that goodwill from India, I'm using the word goodwill, has liberally flowed to, have turned against it for the simple reason that, frankly, there's a lot more goodwill to be got from Beijing than there ever will be from Delhi. No question about it. The people in these countries, I can tell you, will never turn against us.
Okay. Over to you, Ramesh and Jagdish.
There is the US State Department, Dr. Swamy, has made a statement. Okay. It says, we are concerned by Beijing's pattern of ongoing attempts to intimidate its neighbors. As always, we'll stand with friends, we'll stand with partners, we'll stand with allies. What does that mean? hang on. Let me bring
I can
one of you
say
back.
that the Buddhists.
One can
Yeah, I'm
hear
back.
us?
Listen to me. I would like to
Yeah.
say, yeah, I can hear you. Look, the Buddhists in Sri Lanka, we should have a policy towards them. India is friendly with the entire people of Sri Lanka, not just, any section of Sri Lankan society. I see Sri Lankan society as one, and I see the Buddhist heritage as a great asset of India. I'm happy to say that a group of ethnic Chinese from Malaysia have been developing Shravasti in Uttar Pradesh as a wonderful heritage site where Lord Buddha was. So I'm in the Maldives. The Maldives is signing with the United States because the United States is not sure where India will go. And that is the tragedy. The other three Quad members are not sure where India will go. And none of them are sure that India will understand the trap that S-400 represents. So this is a default option for the United States. You remember Pompeo came to Sri Lanka. I can assure you, he must have talked very frankly with Sri Lanka, and I'm quite certain that both Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mahinda Rajapaksa, Mahinda incidentally was your guest in India, and he's a wonderful person. Gotabaya is an absolutely brilliant strategist. I think they are well aware their future lies with the United States, with India, and with the democracies. So I can say that Nepal, the people of Nepal are with us. A few elites are against us. Bangladesh, Hasina did the most wonderful thing. She allowed Indian transport inside Bangladesh, and Prime Minister Modi allowed Bangladeshi transport in India. And she bought Indian electricity, what the great Nawaz Sharif, Mian Nawaz Sharif, called Hindu electricity. I mean, the Bangladeshis are buying huge amounts of Hindu electricity and is lighting up their homes very well, irrespective of whether they're Hindu or Christian or Muslim or whatever. So I would like to beg to differ. The neighborhood is for us because of our 5,000-year culture. And I'd like to remind you what I said in the beginning. Please understand the China from 1949 onwards is new China. and what we call cynic culture, there is a new cynic culture exemplified by the Chinese Communist Party. And please understand, this new culture, don't get romantic about all the fact that you have spent, decades of your life studying a cynic culture. This is new cynic culture. And don't get romantic about Russia, because as Gopi
We lost him.
Yeah, he'll come back, Dr. Swamy.
Yeah, go ahead. Arvind, do you want to ask any questions?
Now, I have a question. That's why, Dr. Swamy, I just want to pose it to you. I don't know if he's back or not. Hang on.
Yeah.
Manu, are you back? No.
Okay.
So what does that mean, Dr. Swamy? So we are concerned by Beijing's pattern of ongoing attempts to intimidate its neighbors. As always, we'll stand with friends, we'll stand with partners, we'll stand with allies.
Yes. What it means basically is they cannot say that that India's neighbors are going to China on their own free will. They are saying they're being pressurized by the Chinese. Of course, the Chinese are pressurizing them, but first they woo them, and then you get trapped, and then they will pressurize them. There's the whole blackmail theory, which is very well eschewed, very well explained in Sun Tzu's doctrines. So I am only saying this, that why is the United States so much against S-400 if it's a good weapon system? I think that my view is I'm finding that I'm finding that Mr. Nalapat is missing this point. The Americans feel that the S-400 would be a plant of the Chinese because of its electronics in the machine. And therefore, they can even make the operation of the S-400, which is fitted in an aircraft, fail because they would know how to jam the electronics. So then, furthermore, of course, once you get S-400 and the electronics, then the Chinese themselves may turn up, or Chinese agents in Russia may turn up, and then they would then probably spy on the American equipment here. So the American equipment, advanced equipment, can't be given. I think this is the way, and looks pretty rational to me. And that's why when Nalapat says that Putin is a good man, etc., it doesn't square with then your opposition to S-400, because Putin must know all this. And that's why he has given the first batch of production of S-400 to China, not to India. And although we are paid for 40,000 of the 100,000 or 40,000 crores of the 100,000 crores, we have already paid in advance. But still, they did not give us priority, even though they had promised they would deliver it by 1st of January, which they have not. Now they are saying they will deliver by 1st January, but of the 2022. And so I would only that particular nuance I would differ with them. That's what I'm saying. The Americans are in a very different language, but saying what they should, translated into common ordinary English. He says that to all the neighboring countries, don't worry about the Chinese breathing down your neck. If you owe them a lot of money, don't worry about that. We will stand by you. That's essentially what they're saying. And this is probably because after what happened in Myanmar.
There's one more thing, Dr. Swamy,
Yes,
that I think India needs to be watching out for. Ilhan Omar, she's been made the vice chairwoman of the subcommittee with foreign affairs and jurisdiction over Africa and human rights studies, human rights issue.
Then we are going to have some hot air from that.
Yeah, and we are going, because they're part of the squad.
United States is going to make a distinction between India and the government of Narendra Modi.
Yeah,
and
so
this is what our people are not understanding.
Yeah, because it is not good news at all that Ilhan Omar is the vice chairwoman.
No, of course. What about the vice president itself, Kamala Harris, she also makes the same distinction. And all statements of Biden, you please read the first, one of the sentences which he emphasizes, which we leave out in our release to the media. He says that I shall continue to pursue the safeguards for democracy in all the nations we deal with. In other words, they're going to make democracy an issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Arvindji, can you hear?
Swamy, I have one question. Monu is not here, but you can answer because you have been mentioning about S-400. We bought S-400, as I said, to counter the Chinese equipment. Now, do we have a choice? If we cancel the deal, even at this stage, do we have a choice?
Of course, the Americans will give you. If you are paying the same kind of money, the Americans will 100% give you. But you can't, see, the Americans believe strategically that you're either with us or against us when it comes to China. And they think that the Russians are more or less with China. They think the Russian equipment has a lot of Chinese electronics. And they are the ones who are now warning us every day that they've done it with Turkey. Turkey is a part of the NATO. And they have imposed sanctions. They said we'll impose sanctions on you also.
Yes.
Because of the delay in delivery, their sanctions have not been yet imposed. And now it's not that we can't survive the sanctions of the United States, but then the relationship with the United States will change. So you can't get the United States on your side vis-a-vis China, because they may have differences. Americans may have differences with China, but now they are not going to have another difference because of India, especially with India is all the time seems to be playing all sides.
So does it mean that we have only two choices, either good relations with US or S-400?
No, we have two choices, self-reliance or become a part of the American system of the Quad 4. With the S-400 is not an alliance because the Russians are not going to be with you. They're going to be with the Chinese.
So we can afford with Russia and China at the same time.
What did you say? Can we be friends with both?
Both China and Russia.
No, how can you? They are China and Russia now. One is a junior partner of the other. I mean, people are not articulating it, but a lot of experts have already started articulating it. What is the Chinese Russian role? Have they condemned what the Chinese have done? You see, they have not. They only said we will facilitate you two to talk to each other. But after the Chinese have got the land they want, then what is there to talk? First clear out, then we will talk. That should be our attitude, but we are not taking that attitude. There is a weakness, a mental weakness, an inferiority complex that we can't do things alone. Whereas in my opinion, we have reached a stage where we can take the Chinese on as far as the border areas are concerned on our own, and we can give them a thrashing in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, I think we have lost Monu.
Monu, yeah. He tried to telephone me in between.
He had to leave. So anyway.
But I think we are running out of time anyway.
Yeah, anyway, you can conclude.
This is the topic. Out of maybe 96 episodes of Words of Wisdom, we have discussed US and China maybe about 15 times. And we know that this will never come to an end, because unless we adopt an ideal strategy in global atmosphere, there's no ideal strategy, and it evolves over a period of time. It's a very dynamic situation, and maybe things change every month. And both US and China are important for us. At least the to cooperation for India's development. So let's look at India's interests. And thank you very much, Dr. Swamy, and thanks, Monu Nalapat, for giving us a very good insight on this crucial issue for India's external relations. Thanks, Jagdish Shetty, my co-host Ramesh Swamy, and the technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas, Swaminathan, Gadgi Rakesh, Kishoraya, and Vishal Mehta. We'll be meeting again on Saturday with Legal Gyan Ganga and on Sunday with Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga with a new topic and Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Thank you very much, viewer, for supporting us. We'll be meeting again next week. Till then, Namaskar, Jai Hind.